The SRA have changed the way that they report the results for the SQE2 assessments in candidates' transcripts. For more information, stay tuned, but only after the jingle.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQETV?
So in this video we're going to be taking a look at what a transcript for SQE2 looks like for a candidate who sits in 2025 or beyond. Because what's changed is that there is now scaled scoring for SQE2. So if you looked at a transcript from 2024 or earlier for SQE2, it will look different to what we're going to show you now. And when I talk about scaled scoring, it's the same principle that's already in existence and being used for SQE1 exams. Just to remind you what that is, all candidates will get a raw mark for the questions they attempt at either SQE1 or SQE2, but because candidates in the same diet or same window of sitting an exam sit different papers on different days, different questions on different days, there has to be an adjustment made in order to level out where the candidates have had slightly harder or slightly easier questions on their day that they sat compared to their peers who may have sat on a different day. So scaling the score effectively means that it evens out the marks across the whole of that window of the assessments, so there's fairness between all candidates. Now you can see in front of you we've mocked up a 2025 SQE2 transcript, and what we're going to do now is to go through each of the 10 fields and explain what they are.
SQETV.
So just to remind you, what we've done is to mock up what we would say is a sample of what an SQE2 transcript would look like, so it's not a real transcript. And what you'll see from the first three substantive lines are that there are 3 dates that are mentioned. Now the first of those dates is the date that you would have sat the SQE2 written assessments. And in fact, all candidates who sat in January 2025 would have sat written assessments on the 11th, 12th and 13th of February because there was no choice there. In contrast, when it came to the oral assessments, candidates had a choice of different sittings, and therefore this particular candidate would have sat on the 30th and 31st of January, but other candidates might have sat on different days. And finally, the other date that's mentioned here at the beginning of the transcript is the date that the results were published, which is the date of the transcript.
SQETV.
Before we look at the next 2 entries on the transcript, it's worthwhile reminding you that a candidate has a maximum of 6 years to pass all their SQE exams, and the clock starts ticking from the date they first sit any SQE assessment. So typically most candidates will start off with SQE1, and therefore it starts off with the date they set FLK1, the first of the SQE exams. However, if you were exempt from SQE1 and therefore only needed to pass SQE2, that clock would start to tick from the date you first sat your first SQE2 assessment. Why is this relevant? Well, let's go back to the transcript. This candidate, you can see they're on attempt number 1, so clearly they would have 2 further attempts had they failed this exam. Spoiler alert, they have passed, as you can see from the bottom of the transcript. And when you look at the deadline to pass the SQE, had this candidate failed, they would have had until the 15th of July 2030 to actually pass.
SQETV.
The next 2 parts of the transcript relate to the scaling of your raw marks that you score. Let's just put all this into context. Remember, for SQE2, there are 16 mini assessments that take place over 5 different days. And at those 16 mini assessments, or stations as we call them, you are marked out of 5 for different aspects of each assessment. And what happens is that all those marks get aggregated and added up. But, and this is critical, the mark gets scaled to a score out of 500, and that will depend on the relative difficulty of the questions you had compared to the ones that other students will have sat at other times of this particular sit for SQE2. And you end up with a score out of 500, with 300 being the pass mark. And in your case, if you were this candidate, you would have scored 388 and therefore done very well indeed and passed extraordinarily well. That ends up being 78% for that particular student, and they are in the first quintile. What that means is that they are in the top 20% of students. So your SQE2's transcript will show the quintile that you're in to show where you are and can be benchmarked against other candidates who sat that particular assessment. And then right at the end of the transcript, you got your overall result, which of course for this student would have been a pass. If you don't pass, it simply just says not pass on your transcript. Also on the transcripts you will also see, which we haven't shown you here on the slides, a breakdown of your marks for each of the 16 stations, so you can see how well you performed. Everything's marked out of 5 for each part of the assessment, for each mini assessment for each station, and it gives you quite a good window into where your weak areas are, particularly if you don't pass, and it allows you then to focus on some of the aspects where you were weaker when you come to prepare for your resit.
SQETV.
Well, I hope you found this useful, particularly if you're waiting your results for the SQE2 assessments. Things have changed with the transcript in terms of what's reported by the SRA, and hopefully this now makes sense. If you've still got to sit SQE2 and maybe you haven't even started your SQE journey, hopefully it gives you an idea of what to expect on SQE2 results day. In the meantime, as we always do when we finish an SQETV video, we ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Do leave a comment in the comment section if there's any content that you would like us to cover in future editions, and please do tap that notification bell, because if you do that you'll find out as soon as our new videos drop. In the meantime, as we always do when we finish an SQETV video, we say it's now time for the jingle.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you